Most people do not fail to find gemstones because of bad luck. They fail because they never remove the wrong locations from their search. They move continuously. They scan everything. They cover ground without direction. The effort is real, but the method is flawed because the surface of the earth is not equally productive. And in geology, productivity is controlled by conditions, not effort. Gemstone discovery is not a process of searching more. It is a process of narrowing down, reducing possibilities, removing environments, focusing only on locations that meet strict geological requirements. Because gemstones do not occur everywhere, they occur in specific systems. This changes the starting point completely. The search does not begin with movement, it begins with exclusion. The first layer of exclusion is geological possibility. Certain landscapes never produce gemstones, not rarely, not occasionally, never. These are environments where the required processes never occurred. Flat sedimentary basins dominated by sandstone, shale, or undeformed limestone represent one of the most common examples. These rocks form through deposition. Particles settle, layers build. Pressure compacts them into solid rock. In these environments, the absence of geological activity defines the outcome. No heat-driven processes, no pressure-induced restructuring, no mineral-rich fluids moving through fractures. Without these conditions, gemstones cannot form. This is why large areas of land can be eliminated immediately, not because they look unproductive, but because they are structurally incapable of producing gemstones. Removing these areas from consideration is not a loss, it is the first gain, because every eliminated environment reduces uncertainty. Once this filter is applied, the landscape changes. What remains are areas where geological processes have been active. These are environments shaped by energy, heat, pressure, movement. Within these environments, three primary systems dominate gemstone formation: magmatic systems, metamorphic systems, hydrothermal systems. Each operates differently. Each produces different minerals. Each leaves a distinct geological signature. Magmatic systems originate from molten rock beneath the Earth's surface. As magma cools, minerals crystallize in sequence. High-temperature minerals form first. Lower-temperature minerals form later. As cooling continues, the remaining melt becomes enriched in elements that did not fit in earlier crystal structures. These elements accumulate in the final stages of solidification. This is where pegmatites form, coarse-grained rocks with unusually large crystals. The size of these crystals is not random. It reflects slow cooling and high fluid content, conditions that allow atoms to migrate and organize over extended periods. Within these environments, minerals such as Beryl, Tourmaline, and topaz can develop. Their presence is controlled by chemistry. Their size is controlled by time. Their location is controlled by the structure of the pegmatite body. Metamorphic systems follow a different path. They begin with existing rock. Rock that is buried, compressed, and heated over time. Under these conditions, minerals become unstable. They reorganize. They recrystallize. New minerals form in response to changing pressure and temperature. This process creates rocks such as schist and gneiss, layered, structured, and mineralogically complex. Within these rocks, minerals like garnet form, not randomly, but within zones where chemical conditions allow crystal growth. The size and distribution of these crystals depend on the intensity and duration of metamorphism. Hydrothermal systems introduce another mechanism. Hot fluids move through fractures in rock. These fluids carry dissolved minerals. As temperature drops, minerals precipitate. They crystallize within the fractures. They form veins. Quartz is the most common mineral in these systems, but it is not the only one. Gold can form under these conditions. So can a range of gemstones, depending on the chemistry of the fluid. These three systems define the majority of gemstone-forming environments. Once a location is identified as belonging to one of these systems, it passes the second level of filtering. But even within these systems, gemstones do not occur everywhere. They concentrate. Concentration is controlled by local conditions, small variations in chemistry, small changes in pressure, small differences in structure. Within a pegmatite, crystals form in pockets, zones where fluid accumulated, where cooling slowed, where conditions stabilized. Within metamorphic rocks, minerals align along structural planes. Certain layers become enriched. Others remain unchanged. Within hydrothermal systems, mineralization intensifies at structural intersections. Where fractures meet, where fluid flow slows, where deposition becomes possible, these zones are limited. They occupy a fraction of the total system. This introduces the third level of filtering, not just identifying the system, but identifying the correct position within it. At this stage, the search area contracts significantly. Large regions become specific zones. General environments become targeted locations. The process continues. Even when gemstones exist within a system, they remain inaccessible without exposure. This introduces the third level of filtering, not just identifying the system, but identifying the correct position within it. At this stage, the search area contracts significantly. Large regions become specific zones. General environments become targeted locations. The process continues. Even when gemstones exist within a system, they remain inaccessible without exposure. Exposure is controlled by erosion. Rock must break down. Material must be removed. Internal structures must be revealed. Without erosion, everything remains hidden beneath the surface. This introduces the fourth level of filtering, accessibility. Areas where rock is actively exposed become critical. River cuts reveal cross-sections of geology. Steep slopes expose internal layers. Weathered outcrops break down and release mineral fragments. These locations provide access to material that would otherwise remain buried. At this stage, only a small number of locations meet all conditions: a valid geological system, a known gemstone-forming environment, a concentration zone, and visible exposure. Everything else is excluded. This is the structure behind successful prospecting. It is not based on movement. It is based on reduction. Removing incorrect locations is more valuable than searching correct ones blindly, because every incorrect location carries zero probability, and zero probability does not change with effort. This principle changes behavior. Movement slows. Observation increases. Decisions become deliberate. Locations are evaluated before they are explored. Rock type becomes the first indicator. Sedimentary rock reduces probability. Metamorphic and igneous rock increase it. Structure becomes a second indicator. Uniform rock reduces interest. Fractured and altered rock increases it. Mineral presence becomes the third indicator. Simple composition reduces potential. Complex mineralization increases it. Exposure becomes the final indicator. Covered rock delays access. Exposed rock enables it. Only when all indicators align does the search begin. At that point, effort becomes meaningful because it is applied within a system that supports the outcome. This method also removes bias. Visual appeal no longer influences decisions. A location that appears unremarkable may meet all conditions. A location that appears ideal may meet none. The difference is not visual, it is geological. This distinction separates random searching from structured exploration. Random searching reacts. Structured exploration evaluates. Over time, the difference compounds. Random searching produces inconsistent results. Structured exploration produces repeatable outcomes because it operates within defined systems. And systems behave predictably, not in exact results, but in probability. Once this framework is understood, efficiency increases. Less ground is covered, more information is processed, better decisions are made. This leads to a fundamental shift. Effort becomes selective. Time is invested only where conditions justify it. Locations are rejected quickly, not out of uncertainty, but out of clarity. This clarity reduces wasted time and increases focus on productive areas. Over extended periods, patterns emerge. Certain rock types consistently appear near discoveries. Certain structures repeat. Certain environments produce results. These patterns reinforce the system. They confirm the method, and they reduce reliance on chance. At this stage, prospecting becomes systematic. Each decision is based on evidence. Each action follows logic. Each location is justified. The process continues to refine itself. Knowledge accumulates. Recognition improves. Time between decisions decreases. Accuracy increases. Eventually, the search becomes efficient, not because the environment changes, but because understanding improves. This leads to consistency, not constant success, but consistent probability. And consistent probability leads to results over time, because the system remains the same. Geology does not change quickly. The processes that form gemstones occurred over millions of years. The conditions that allowed them remain recorded in the rock. By reading those conditions, the search aligns with reality, and alignment with reality produces results. This is the difference between searching and finding. Searching covers ground. Finding follows structure. Structure defines outcome, and outcome reflects process. The process remains constant. Eliminate impossible environments. Identify valid systems. Locate concentration zones. Confirm exposure. Apply effort only after all conditions are met. Everything else is removed. This approach transforms the search. It removes randomness. It replaces uncertainty with structure. And it creates a pathway from effort to result. Because gemstones are not hidden randomly. They exist within systems. Systems that can be understood. Systems that can be followed. Systems that can be identified before a single stone is seen. This understanding changes perception. The landscape becomes readable. Rock formations become indicators. Structures become signals. Minerals become evidence. Everything contributes to interpretation, and interpretation guides action. Action becomes precise. Precision increases efficiency. Efficiency increases probability. Probability produces results. Over time, the difference becomes clear. Random searching continues without direction. Structured prospecting narrows toward outcome. The same environment, different approach, different result. Because the method defines the outcome, and the method is based on elimination, removing everything that does not support gemstone formation until only the correct locations remain. At that point, the search is no longer broad, it is focused. And focus changes everything. Because within the correct system, effort has meaning. And where effort has meaning, results become possible. This is how gemstones are found. Not by searching everywhere, but by understanding where they cannot exist and removing those places completely until only the environments that support them remain. And within those environments, discovery is no longer random. It becomes a direct outcome of process. A process built on geology, a process built on elimination, a process that transforms searching into finding. And once that process is understood, everything changes.